Hey friends, welcome back to another video. For those of you who missed my little announcement about these Flashback Fridays, I'm just letting you know that for a couple Fridays here and there, I'm going to be bringing back some old videos. So if you're looking at the title of this video thinking, did she do another drills video or haven't I seen this before? Yeah, you probably have. But like I said, there are many new subscribers that have missed a bunch of these videos through my catalog of over 700 videos, and Mama is experiencing a little bit of burnout, but I also wanted to keep creating content, bring some of our really great videos back into the forefront on my channel for those who may have missed it, just as a way that I can keep myself motivated and keep going without feeling that burnout and without losing my passion for this, because I do love this job. I do love everything about it, but it can be a little exhausting coming up with so much and so many different platforms. So for a couple Fridays here and there, we're going to be replaying some of my favorite videos, some of our more popular videos, especially for beginners. So let's jump in to another video.
Okay, so for today's part one of our drills video of wet on wet and color bleeds, we're going to be doing a really fun activity that I still do to this day when I just kind of want to let go, relax, and throw some color on paper. It's a lot of fun to do, and like I said, it's relaxing, but it's also very important to learn and to practice when you are painting with watercolor. So I'm going to be painting in my Etchr Lab cold press watercolor sketchbook. I have it clipped down because this is the last page of my sketchbook, so it was kind of folding a bit. And you just want to keep your paper as flat as possible, especially when doing wet on wet and backgrounds or whatever, just because if your paper is kind of tilted or buckling on one side, it will start to pool in some areas, which can cause a little bit of trouble. So if you want to tape down your paper to your table or whatever, that might be a good idea, but I just have mine clipped down in my sketchbook. I'm using my Winsor Nude Professional Watercolors, and I have my Princeton snap brush in a size 12. So you just want a nice big brush, whatever you have handy, and we're going to begin. So for those who don't know, wet on wet is exactly what it sounds like. You are putting wet paint on a wet surface. So the first thing we have to do, my dog, is wet up the surface. And for this exercise, we're going to be doing some circles. Okay, so what I want you to do is take some clean water on your brush, get your brush nice and wet, and you're going to, it's a little hard to see, just start painting a circle. Now, the tip that I have for you with wet on wet, and it's very important, what you're looking for when you are creating a wet background, you don't want it too wet to the point where it's going to pool or drip if you were to tilt it to the side, but you want to make sure that there's a nice light shine to the paper if you were to tilt it. So I'm just going to see if I can show you by just moving this paper. When you tilt it towards the light, you should see a nice sheen. So it's kind of like a shine over that area that you just painted. This also helps you to see if there's any areas you missed. Now, what you don't want is it pooling in one area. So that's when you have a lot of water. I'm just going to try and add a lot of water. Hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, that when you tilt it, it all pools in one area. That's not what you want. And this goes for like if you're doing a background and you're wetting up the whole paper, you don't want it pooling in one area, because once you drop that color in, it's going to just sit there. Okay, and also the paper is going to dry at different rates. And so it's going to be really hard to work with. Let me make sure that you guys can see. Yeah. So that little pool right there, you don't want. If you do have that, all you have to do is dry off your brush on your paper towel, mop it up, or you can take some paper towel right to the paper. Just keep drying your brush off on your paper towel and move that around until you have a nice even sheen and there's no pool. Next, you are going to go into your color, whatever color you want to use. Hopefully I can keep this a little bit flatter. It's tilting down a bit, so it might pool a bit. Whatever color you want to use. You don't want your paintbrush dripping, because once you add more water, it's also going to create a pool. So just try and get more pigment on your brush than water. And all you're going to do is you're going to touch little sections of that wet surface area and watch it bleed, or just like kind of move. Okay, and this is wet on wet. Wet on wet is awesome for getting some really nice seamless gradients. So if you're doing like a sunset or a sky and you want to have it go blue to orange to whatever, it will create that really nice kind of fuzzy blend where you don't see any harsh lines. You don't get harsh lines with wet on wet. This is also great for making things look out of focus. So I've done a couple tutorials where I've done like trees in the background. I'll just show you like, okay. And then once that dries, it will look like it's a blurry tree in the background. And we'll get into that in our next video. But just kind of dropping that color in there, doing wet on wet can create so many different effects. It's awesome. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to just drop in color. Let's drop in some more color on top of that. I'm going to grab some Payne's Gray and just watch it move. Okay. Now, like I said, if there's a pool, let's create a little pool here. Okay. There's way too much water. I'm going to show you what happens. I drop in the color there. Whoops. And it just sits there. That's not what you want. You want it to dance and kind of move. All right, so I'm just going to grab my paper towel. If that happens, and you can just mop it up like that, and then just move around that wet pigment, okay? You don't want a pool. Okay, so now that we've talked about what wet on wet is, we're going to talk about color bleeds. And you can also do that with this exercise. So here I have my little circle. Now, a color bleed is when you touch two wet colors together and one color will bleed into the next. So let's grab, I don't know, turquoise. My color choices aren't great here. And I'm going to do another circle right beside, slightly touching it, and watch the bleed that happens. Touching. You see that pigment being pulled into the turquoise? Once I do another color, you'll see it a bit more. I feel like I could have planned out my color choices a bit better, but that's okay. Just a demonstration, okay? You're just gently touching it. Okay, and I do color bleeds a lot in my florals. I love the way it looks. Okay, you can even do a color bleed of the color bleeding into just water. So I'm gonna clean off my brush and just have a wet brush and watch this. I'm just gonna touch this gently. And this also creates a really cool effect of it just bleeding into the water. See that? Look at that. That's so cool. And I'm gonna grab some more pigment. Purple, some colors also tend to move a bit better. I find that with my dioxazine purple and some of the cadmium yellows and oranges. Just watch how much that spreads out. Okay, make sure that your circle's not too wet. This looks a little bit too wet. It's kind of just pooling in one area, so let's mop that up a bit. Dry off my brush on my paper towel. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm just drying it off like that, making sure it's still wet. You'll get a much better color bleed, or a wet on wet kind of like explosion when it's the right amount of wetness. Okay. And you're just going to create circles or even whatever shape you want all over your paper. Just dropping in color, seeing what you can create. Okay. Let's do another, I don't know, let's get some green. Just mix colors, see what happens. I'm going to do 2 color bleeds. And you'll only get a color bleed happening when that first color is still wet. So it has to still be wet for you to touch and get those color bleeds. Because once it dries, it won't bleed like that. I'll show you over here. That's a wretched green. You'll also see how soft these blends are once it dries too. You're not going to get any really harsh lines. Okay, so I'll just show you up here, it's a bit dry. So if I were to touch just a bit, you're not gonna get a color bleed because this one is already dry. Okay, and then that goes into layering, which is another drills video to come. Okay, so another thing I want you to practice with this is working on bleeding, contrasting, and complementary colors, or doing wet on wet. So if you don't know, contrasting or complementary colors are the colors that sit directly across from each other on the color wheel. So orange and blue, red and green, yellow and purple. Mixed together, they create brown. So if you have one color bleeding into the next, if you mix it too much, you could turn brown. But with the right color bleed, you can get that really nice red bleeding into green without it turning brown. And that's something to practice. So here we have green. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so I'm gonna grab some red and I'm gonna try and do a color bleed. I don't know if that green was wet enough. I'll try again. And this is something I do with my florals. So if I'm doing like a red flower or a pink flower, and then I do a green leaf right beside it, you're gonna get that complementary or contrasting color bleed, which if it mixes too much, if you touch it too much, it's gonna turn brown. So you're just gonna have to let it touch once and kind of let it bleed into each other. And that just takes practice, doing it over and over again. So something like this, an exercise like this is really good to do. Let's grab some green and do another color bleed right beside this red, see if we can get that proper color bleed that I want. Okay, you want to see the difference between that red and green. You don't want a muddy brown in between. Okay, so you're just tapping it like that. Okay, so you're going to see that green seeping into the red, hopefully not turning brown. Definitely something to practice. Usually when I do color bleeds, besides flowers, I will try and keep the colors that are next to each other on the color wheel so you don't get that brown. But sometimes it works. So see that green just seeping into the red, but you don't really see a brown. You see green, then red. And that's kind of the ideal of what you want. Okay, another way to do that, to put contrasting and complementary colors in the same area, maybe doing wet on wet without getting that muddy brown. Let's try yellow and purple. So I'm going to do like a yellow circle here. And I'm not going to make it too saturated with color because I don't want it to be too much. And we're going to try and do a wet on wet with purple. Now the trick with that is, again, don't move your brush around too much. Let it drop in that color and let it do its thing. Don't mix, mix, mix. Okay, so I'm gonna make it more saturated on this side. I'm gonna leave it a little bit lighter in the center. So I'm washing off my brush, drying it a bit. I'm gonna grab a bit of purple and I'm gonna tap it once, okay? Or maybe twice. The key is tapping it, not moving your brush around. Okay, so you get that specific yellow color and purple color without mixing it and creating a brown. Because I'm going to show you what's going to happen. If you tap it too many times, see how that part coming out is coming out more brown. Here it's more purple. Okay, I also did it on a very saturated yellow part. Okay, so you're going to have more of a chance for it to create purple. An example of this is if you're doing like a pansy. So a lot of them are yellow and purple. So I'll do like the purple petals and then the center I'll put yellow. Just tap it once to get that yellow bleed into the purple. But if you mix, 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 you're gonna get a very muddy purple and that's not what you want. You just wanna tap it that one time. Let's see if I can tap a bit of yellow right on top of the purple here. Actually, let's see, let's get more purple because this is a bit more wet. Okay. And it also kind of looks like a tie-dye pattern, which is super fun. I'm gonna grab some yellow. I'm gonna do it right on top. Just tap it once and see how bright that yellow is. Okay, you don't want to mix it around because that's when it starts turning brown. You can tap it. And you're having purple and yellow wet colors right on top of each other without it mixing. Okay, so a lot of people like to overdo it and it's just too much. Okay, that's when it turns brown. You got to just kind of hold yourself back and let the colors do its thing. So here, see that color bleed from green to red? You get that distinct green into red without the muddy brown mixing. Okay, so try and do this with some contrasting or complementary colors. That's great practice of how to kind of contain yourself from, you know, overworking a painting essentially. Okay, so just fill up a whole page with different colors. You could do squares, lines, stripes. So like okay, so here we're gonna do a color bleed. Doing a stripe. Let's get like a blue, and you're just gonna touch it gently. See that color bleed? The blue into pink, beautiful. You could just do a whole page of color bleeds, just gently touching. I like when you have like just water on your brush and you let that color bleed. Let's do yellow. Okay, and you can just do lines all over your paper. And then again, our wet on wet, oops, work just with water. Again, try and make sure it is not pooling. Tip it to the side. If it all rushes to one area, that's not ideal. Mop it up with your dry brush or with your paper towel. Try and get that nice light sheen. Okay, not pooling anywhere. Lift up any pigment. And practice just dropping in that color and have fun with it. Okay, you can create a lot of, I don't know why I just dipped it in green. You can create a lot of fun patterns doing this. Polka dots, whatever you want. Okay, so this is our practice. This is our practice drills. And then in our next video, I'm going to show you how to incorporate everything you've learned here into actual mini little paintings and where it comes in handy. So for now, practice this, different shapes, different colors, and just have a lot of fun. Put on some really relaxing music, grab yourself a tea, grab yourself a glass of wine, whatever you like, and enjoy the process. And now I'm gonna leave you with a relaxing video of me practicing this drill myself. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. I'll see you again soon. Bye.